Hello again, everyone. It's me, the Purple Sharpie, but you can call me Sharpie if you're feeling especially space casey today. Now, speaking of amazing space-tastic action bullet helly games, I have a member of Dream Not Studios here, Dan Bernardo, the founder and game director of the brand new project Grid Force Mask of the Goddess is here. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We understand you all are obviously based inside of the UK, and I know that time differences get kind of messy, but I know that you've taken so much time out of your incredibly busy schedule and incredibly busy release press schedule to talk about this new project, Grid Force. What can you tell us about it?
So Grid Force is our first game and is a very fast-paced RPG. It's inspired in games like Mega Man Battle Network and things of the 70s and 90s, and tells a story about overcoming your own problems and then finding a family outside the family. So it's an RPG, but very fast-paced, very strategical.
Now, I believe we also have an action-paced, really 80s, 70s-esque trailer here, kind of going over what the game is and what happens inside of it. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Wake up. You were a waste of time.
Okay. Now, after that trailer, I have a couple of very, very organic questions. The very first of which, after watching that trailer, I'm immediately reminded of things that I personally saw growing up because I am a 90s baby, you know, the best age, the best decade. But I grew up seeing these movie trailers for things like The Matrix, for Duke Nukem, for Doom. And there are these huge action posters that almost like feel like what that trailer was. Was that intentional?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a love letter of the games of the past, but we are trying to update this with graphics that we love and also mechanics that we find they're fresh. But everything that we put in the game is quite intentionally to kind of hit the nostalgia spot that we also have.
Now, to talk a little bit more about some of the art style that we see inside of the game, we see a lot of very sharp, jagged lines, which once again are a very big homage to like the comic book style and manga style that you also use to explain narrative inside of here. We know that a lot of the cutscenes that we have aren't necessarily just animated cutscenes. They're actually panel by panel comic books with cut-ins that kind of talk about story and talk about what the characters are thinking. Why did you choose to use that to explain more about the voices inside of the character?
I think Before being a game developer, I was a graphic designer. So I have like a passion for the history of graphic design, how it's used to explain and to create emotional connections. And there's two reasons why we just decided this. One is because we think it looks really cool. We want the characters to be simple enough that they're almost like icons that you can just recognize them and know what they are about, but also because they are very easy to draw. So it's easy for us to create more characters and spend more time also in the story. For the comic book, it's funny because we wanted to have the normal, cutscene, animated cutscene, and we just see how, badly it ages. But we are all lovers of manga in the team, and our artist there is Noem, is a amazing artist. She's like, could be a nice idea to have this as a manga. And immediately everybody said, yes, let's do this. And we are very happy with the result.
Now, I know you mentioned a few members of your team. Obviously, this is your very first project. But one of the things I wanted to ask here is I understand, especially with independent teams, sometimes you're not able to do everything yourself. Sometimes you have to go out and contract other work. But I understand every single member of your team was responsible for every single aspect of this game. It was 100% made inside of in-house.
Yes, absolutely. And the things that we didn't know how to do in the beginning, we learned. People really talk about the soundtrack, and it's like, okay, who did the soundtrack? It really slaps. Actually, it is our producer who didn't know anything about music. 1 year in the project, but he was like, oh, we have to find somebody to do the music. And I was like, okay, you can just give a try. And he spent 2 weekends working on like learning all the basics. And he just creates an incredible soundtrack from the scratch. I'm still amazed by it. It's so we actually I keep listening to it when I'm working because I love it. So we decided to also launch the soundtrack because yeah, it was amazing. But everybody got like people who didn't know about animation became animators, people didn't know about coding became coders. So everybody like went to like one step ahead, step forward that they supposed to just to be able to actually deliver the game.
Now, I also just want to shout out the fact that your engineer, specifically your audio engineer, was able to pump out a soundtrack like that, because I'm actually a classically taught musician, and I have been studying music theory for 17 years. The music inside of this game is so astounding. It's very Blade Runner-esque, Quantum Leap-esque, like I'm going back into the 60s, back in time, like I get so many nostalgic vibes. I literally feel like I'm walking down the streets inside of 87, going to go see like the brand new sci-fi movie of the time, like literally Back to the Future again, and I think that the fact that so many members of your team were essentially put out of their element and able to resolve all the issues and all of these new challenges that they ran into during the creation of this game, with the finished product of this obviously being here. I just want to say, I know that the game was made inside of Unity. Do you feel the fact that you were using an engine like Unity helped make some of those barriers a lot easier to jump over?
Oh, absolutely. It was a very deliberate decision to go for Unity because we knew that the community is so big and we're going to be able to get community help when things that we don't know. And it actually happened more than one time. So in the very beginning, I was like, let's go to another platform. And we definitely want to explore them in the future. But we thought Unity would be a great two, and it actually was. Also, it's great for us to be able to be launching in more than one platform at the same time. It would be very hard to do it in other places. So it was the right decision, and we are very happy with that.
So obviously, you all are already actively live on Steam. What other platforms are we able to get the game on right now?
So Xbox and is also live, and we're going to be launching on Nintendo Switch quite soon. And we love PlayStation, so we are like we have to have this in PlayStation as well. We have a few things planned for the future of the game, so it's a long term thing. But we hope to be in all main platforms as soon as possible.
Y'all hear that, Sony? contact them, get this game on your platform. Okay, I personally know that I would love to see this game on the main stage of Evo at some point, which brings me on to my very next point here. Obviously, the roster is filled with so many colorful, amazing characters, but it is very, very nostalgic to me personally because I actually grew up playing Mega Man Battle Network. Personally, like I played 4 and 5 and 6. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about some of the gameplay inside of there. So I'd like to bring it back over there. Now, obviously, you have multiple characters inside of the game, all amazing, powerful women, obviously. But one of the things that I noticed is that not only are they very powerful, they all have different attack patterns. Can you discuss kind of why you chose to give them a little bit more than just the organic, like pew pew? You know, why they have such different organic attack patterns for each character?
Yes, because we want this. The RPG part of the game is quite important for us. It's a very deep story. It's a very emotional story, but we try to tell them with a lot of humor. It's very, very today's humor. We get lots of slack that we, people, teenagers for today are gonna get. But we also want them to be unique in the gameplay. We want them to have their own unique ability. And because you actually, from all characters, you have to select 4 of them for each battle, and you can change them on the go. It's almost like you're getting 4 characters and creating one big character. It wants people to be able to make as many combinations as they possibly wanted. And so each one of the characters has to be fulfilling a role in a bigger character. And you want them to be quite unique as well.
So let's talk a little bit more about that uniqueness, because one of the things that I did see inside of the game was not just some very classic battle animated or bully hell techniques where you are just using attack patterns and adding in different attack patterns from different enemies. I also saw some fighting game mechanics that I'm personally very familiar with. I saw just guarding, which is the ability to actually guard immediately, like on the frame that an attack hits to completely negate it, and parrying, which when it is negated, it immediately throws that attack back and puts the person who blocked at advantage. Where did you get the concept of adding those mechanics into the game?
That is actually from the fighting games of the 80s and the 90s. We were working together once. And the team is quite collaborative. I am the game director, but ideas come from everywhere. And I remember one of our animators said, you should like guard it. We should have a nice guard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, a guard? I never saw
Yeah.
it before. And like, we need a specific button for this. It's gonna be complicated. And people are like, no, we have to try. And we made a very, very quick test and it was very satisfying. And I think somebody else in the team, I think it was Noe, she said, oh, maybe if he reflects, then you have another layer of complexity. And then we tried as well. And then somebody else like, we should be able to bounce between like reflecting infinitely. And then we try again, and it just feels right and just adds so much layer to it. So now the parrying and the reflecting and defending became such a big part of the game that it's such a differentiator from everything else that we see in this genre that we really love. Was like a happy accident that we just build upon.
So something that also exists inside of the game that I kind of want to pay homage to is the elemental disadvantage and advantage listing inside of here. A lot of people who play games like Pokemon are very, very very aware of the concept of different elements being stronger or weaker inside of other games, but you don't typically see games like this that are RPGs, that are quote unquote bullet hells or tactical bullet hells, have concepts like this. So talk to me about why you chose to not only make earth, light, dark, water, and fire all have different combinations together, but why you also chose to implement it specifically inside of this type of game and add that other layer of complexity and excitement for players to enjoy.
I think it's to answer this question, like I have to go to like movies, movie scripts. I remember like when I was studying movie scripts, my teachers used to say, why did you wrote this? And I'll say like, it's because it's nice. And he said, if it doesn't have a utility, take it out. So we want everything to be connected, everything to have a utility. So in the game, you have the lore of the game talks about this. It's not just about, a mechanic. We want the lore because the lore talks about the sigils and how the elements are different. We want like, okay, this needs to be as part of the mechanic of the game. And want to add a new layer of tactical choices because some of the enemies of the game seamlessly impossible to beat until you use all these mechanics together. And using the elementals as a way to like boost characters and make characters weaker depending of the situation. And as in one point of development, we almost cut it because we thought this is a bit too complex, but we managed to organize and make this clear enough for people. And then the feedback we got from players was, I love it and I know how to use it. So we want to make sure that if we put the elemental system, it's part of the game lore, but also improves the gameplay. And I think it worked really well.
It definitely does. Inside of the demo version that I played, while the full game is obviously out, I did unfortunately have to play a demo game at the time of this recording. But inside of the version that I played, I did feel that immersive level of complexity coming through in the game, which brings me to my very next topic and one of my final topics, accessibility inside of this game. Typically, when people talk about accessibility, what they're typically talking about is ease of access, making sure that any player and every player can use it. But the way that I saw accessibility inside this game was actually very, very unique. Not only did you all not have an integrated difficulty, possibly making players have to choose or talk about the layer of complexity that they want to play at, but you also have full controller support, which when I was playing on my hitbox, shout outs to hitbox, I actually had a fantastic time because my hitbox integrated perfectly with this game. And I had such a fun time literally working out my little hitbox combos on it. Talk to me about how planned accessibility was inside of this game and why it was important for your team.
I think when we started creating the game for console, for PC, we just kept we made the first attempt with the keyboard and it was working really well. But the one thing I wanted to people to do is to play the way they want to play it. So the first thing we did was to be able to get the player to be able to map out the the control the way they wanted, which feels like it's a simple task, but it's actually not. It's actually very complicated to get this right. But then it just kept coming to us like, this is a console game. This is such a 90s, 80s game. This is a console game. So we decided to add very full supports to controllers. And we actually suggest people to play with the controllers because I think it's a different feel. We love the feel of the controllers, but we want to make sure that everybody, no matter where they are going to play, no matter what they're going to play with, they have a great experience.
So obviously we're coming towards the end of this interview here, but I just want to take so much time here to appreciate and thank you again, Dan, and everybody at Dreamnaught Studios. You all made a beautiful, beautiful work of art inside of this project. And I understand you all made it only in about 3 years, just under, I believe it was a 2.5 year timeline that you created this project in. Is that correct?
That's true. That's true. It was very hard 3 years, but we enjoyed every minute.
Congratulations to you and everybody else at Dreamnaught Studio, and I wish you all the most success with Grid Force.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, everybody, as always, you can grab the game right now on Xbox, Nintendo Switch, or on Steam. If you are interested in supporting Dreamnaught Studios, you can check them out right now on TikTok, on Instagram. They are available at Playtra Games on all platforms. And you may even want to check out my streams of their game on my TikTok too, but we'll see. As always, thanks for coming to yet another amazing game development interview. I'm your host, the Purple Sharpie, and I'll see you later. This Game Does with Color Expo 2022.